there's been, I get stuff all the time. People ask me, like, is this real? Is this real? Um, there's a giant amount of misinformation out about health. Pretty much everything the FDA says, everything the medical system tells you is a lie. Because remember, you kind of have to, like, people are like, how do we figure out what the best thing to do is? Follow the money. 100% of the time, follow the money. So for instance, the big thing, everything the medical system tells you is a lie because their goal is to decrease your health so that they will sell you more drugs. The entire purpose of the vaccines are to damage your children so that they have a much higher chronic disease issues, so that they have to buy drugs from the moment of birth on. The asthma, the ADD, the ADHD, the allergies, the eczema, the psoriasis, the chronic inflammation, all the things that these vaccines are designed to create is 100% designed to damage your children so they have to buy more drugs later. And I think it's hilarious. We're like, no studies were done. Okay, lots of studies were done. Just like there was no studies done that showed that cigarettes were bad for you. Those studies were done. They just weren't, they were burned and not disclosed. So yeah, the vaccine schedule, all those things were set up intentionally to create problems. So, and then there's a bunch of stuff out that, is telling people, to do this and do that. And that's where all of this is. So if you're just like, okay, who benefits, who profits from the information that you're getting? If it's part of an advertising campaign, my guess is that the thing they're selling is what profits from it. If it's the, drug companies, the insurance companies, the medical function, that's who profits from it. So kind of look at that stuff and kind of figure out well, who's making money off this, and do I trust those people? There's a lot of people I hear are like, well, I don't want to take supplements because they're not FDA approved. And I'm trying to say that without laughing, but the FDA has never been right about anything they've ever said, ever. So I don't know why people still listen to them. If you look at what our government, so the FDA, so the medical system, again, not the doctors, the medical system, the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, those guys, the ones who dictate medical function. Let's just walk back through COVID real fast. Here's the things that we now know. Some of this is being figured out right now. So there's a guy on Tucker talking about this. We've talked about this a lot. We know for a fact, because of congressional testimony, Rand Paul did with Fauci, our country, our government developed COVID. At the same time they were developing COVID, they developed the vaccine. It was developed in North Carolina in a lab here, and then somehow mysteriously showed up in Wuhan, and then mysteriously got out in Wuhan. Then it went global very, 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 very quickly, much faster than any other diseases ever spread. Then once it got out, seeing as how our government did all the research and everything on it, they didn't tell you how to fight it. They didn't tell you how to deal with it. In any dissent, anyone who, like me, who got on social media and was like, hey, quinine hyperbaric knocks this thing out in about 48 hours, we got suppressed. My social media is still destroyed because of it. There's a whole bunch of that. They started putting doctors, they started taking doctors' licenses for writing ivermectin. We had research from other countries showing that ivermectin was extremely beneficial. We had a guy come, you can look this up. We had a guy come, doctors from Brazil come and talk to Congress, talking about the research they've done on ivermectin, how great it was. And yet doctors were still getting their licenses pulled for writing ivermectin prescriptions. And ivermectin has almost zero negative functions as far as death or significant toxicity. So it was completely safe. However, and it was effective according to all the research we had at the time. However, it was you got in trouble if you wrote it. Doctors were using inhaled steroids, and they were getting in a significant trouble. They were getting their licenses pulled. They were getting suspended for using inhaled steroids because they worked. If you've heard of the monoclonal antibodies, those monoclonal antibodies were hard to come by, not because they were hard to make or because we couldn't get them to people, because our government actively suppressed them. This is all this information is out now. The government wanted you to be sick. They wanted you to be miserable. They lied about how bad it was. If you go back and look, they literally altered the PCR machines via Wi-Fi to show everything was COVID. If you go back and look at the deaths from the flu, it's 70, 80,000 for 4 or 5 years before COVID, and then it was 80. And it was right after COVID, when it was okay to die from the flu again, because we weren't trying to sell all the COVID nonsense. It went back to 70, 80,000. So, it's it's kind of one of those things that it's obvious that our government did this to us. Now, the other side of that is that they still feel like they have dominion over your body. They can tell you what things you can and can't put in your body and that whole deal, which I think we should revisit. That's a completely different conversation. Now we go to the health influencers online who are trying to sell, all sorts of things from, exercise plans and diet plans and supplements and oils and, all the things. And a lot of that stuff is accurate. And a lot of that stuff is, the problem we get into is that a lot of that stuff is accurate for an individual, but not for everybody. So for instance, the carnivore diet's a phenomenal diet. Not everybody can run it. Not everybody needs a low glycemic diet. There's a lot of ectomorphs who need a high glycemic diet. So when you start rolling all that information in, you get somebody who comes in and is like, I ate a whole bunch of sugar and that helped me gain muscle mass, blah, blah, blah. True. That guy's an ectomorph. If you're not, that information won't help you. There's a lot of guys who came in and like, I went carnivore and it cured my type 2 diabetes and I lost all this weight. I feel amazing. Yeah, there's a big section of the population that's fine for. However, it's also difficult to run with. Not a whole lot of people can just eat steak and eat carnivore stuff for 20 years. So Dr. Peterson talks about how it's not a fun diet. It's the only diet that he can run that he feels healthy on, but he doesn't like doing it because it excludes him from all sorts of things. So there's a lot of stuff out. What we need to start recognizing is that there are a couple easy truths, and we need to start figuring out, we need to start working with people who can tailor healthcare to you. So one of the things that you want to look at is typically, not everybody, but typically lower glycemic diets are going to be better for you. Everybody's got to exercise. We've got to get out and move. We've got to get our hormones within balance and get those back where they need to be. We have to do something to reduce and eliminate, whatever psychological stress we have. These are some of the things that we know we've got to do. Exercise is probably the best for all of these things. Your body was designed to move. If you'll move it, it'll get better. Now, on the other side of that, all the different supplements and which is best, this and that, depends on you as a person, depends on your goals, depends on where you're going. I take a whole bunch of stuff that is not necessary for the vast majority of people. And people always come in and they ask me like, well, what are you taking? And I show them and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to take this to be healthy. And I'm like, no, this is what I have to take to be healthy because of how I've designed my life and my goals. So things get a little bit different. We have to start to understand that we are all individual people. Our biochemistry is a little bit different. Well, actually to a lot different than a lot of people. And so there's going to be things that we kind of need to figure out and go through individually. Now, I wish that there's a whole bunch of doctors out there who are actually doing these things, but you have to understand in the medical community, the MDs, the DOs, the guys anybody who writes scripts, basically, their education isn't about how the body works, isn't about how to get the body to heal itself. It's about how to sell drugs. So the easiest way to think about this is your body wasn't designed with with the chemicals that the drugs use. They're all synthetic chemicals, which means they're not available in nature. So the idea that your body has to have these synthetic things in order to function at a high level is a little bit silly. Like we should realize that we don't necessarily need these things. And as we're going through and actually getting research from people who apparently care more about other human beings than they do about their own safety and livelihood, what we're starting to find is that cholesterol is great for you. It has no bearing on cardiovascular health. So the statin drugs are useless. SSRIs and research show zero functionality above exercise and diet. So we shouldn't be doing those. If you really want to look at mental health, we need to start looking at psychedelics, which are, by the way, natural. Hormones are phenomenal for you. Testosterone is super important. That should be over the counter. It should not be withheld. The government should not be able to withhold these things from you. Cannabis is probably the best option we have for pain. The sunlight's great. Getting outside, getting on the earth, the resonant frequency of the earth is fantastic. The vast majority of things that we've been told are lies because they're trying to sell you things, not make you healthier. Look at any of the industries. Remember, the insurance company makes more money off the drugs that you buy than it does off anything else. So the insurance companies aren't your buddy either. So look at, if you really want to know, where's all this health stuff coming from? Before you start looking at it, be like, who's making the money off of this? Because once you figure out who's making the money off of it, then you can be like, do I trust this person or this group? Like, when have they told me the truth? How often do they tell me the truth? When they are wrong, do they go back and go, hey, we were wrong about X, Y, and Z. Now let's move forward. So for instance, even Tylenol has been telling everybody not to use Tylenol during pregnancy. We've known about this glutathione thing for a long, long time. Look at all the chiropractors. The chiropractors have been screaming about how vaccines are highly deadly for at least 25 years, because they were talking about it really loud when I was going through school. I graduated in 2007. So we've been talking about this a long time. We knew back then, back in 2007 when I graduated, that Tylenol depleted glutathione enhanced the damage from vaccines. This has been known for a long time. Even Tylenol, I'm sure you guys have seen the memes, have come out and been like, Tylenol doesn't recommend Tylenol when you're pregnant. However, what are all the doctors recommending? A lot of doctors are telling people, take Tylenol when you get a vaccine, even if you don't have any problems, or give your babies Tylenol, even if they don't have any problems, to, help decrease pain and fever stuff. Well, who told them to do that? The FDA, the NIH, the CDC, those guys told them to do that. That's the standard of care. That's how we establish the standard of care. So I get it that it's really, really hard and that there's misinformation everywhere. The problem is the vast majority of your misinformation is coming from the government. It's coming from the CDC, the WHO, the NIH, and the FDA. So, it is very difficult to turn around and be like, well, how do we trust things and what do we do? The best way to do it is to go to the research and go to the actual, how is the body functioning? How is the body designed to function? The way that I do it, the way that I vet things, is I look at the body as a machine that was created by someone who's, wildly more intelligent than I am, created by God to do the things it's supposed to do on the earth, utilizing the things that are put on the earth for us to use to make us healthier. That's the way that I dictate it. And then it's like, how would a machine be designed to do this, to go through this function? And the chemistry kind of falls in place. So I also spent more than a decade reading biochemistry and doing that type of stuff. So I realized not everybody else has done that. So you got to figure out who to take your advice from, or who to take word from. That's kind of where a lot of this stuff is. So my recommendation to you is find the people that are giving you information that doesn't make them money. Find the people who are recognizing the fact that what you've been told so far is inaccurate, and is trying to help people just kind of get through. I would share those people with your friends. I would make sure that everybody kind of starts to get that information. I'd look at the guys who are being suppressed by the government, who, the social media groups and whatnot are suppressing. And I would try to do whatever you can to get that information out. So, again, it took me 4 months to figure out how to fix COVID. I posted it and it crushed my social. We were pulling people out of hospitals to save their lives. I'm going to do some stuff with Sean Hendricks today. And he went from literally online asking for prayers to 48 hours later talking about how great his workout was, because he ran through my COVID protocol. I wish that everybody would have had access to that information during COVID, because it would have saved a lot of lives. But again, the point of COVID was to maintain significant control over people, make a whole bunch of money, and thin the population. But it is what it is. If you guys have any questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com, or drop in the comments. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a phenomenal